In this video, I'm going to tell you not just what tyre pressures to use, but importantly, give you the knowledge to know why you should use them. Because short of taking your chain off or sabotaging your own brakes, there is no single more important thing on your bike that can affect your ride. Okay, I'm exaggerating slightly. I would imagine taking your saddle off might also change your bike ride quite significantly, but nonetheless, tyre pressure is super important.
Get them too soft and you'll be more susceptible to punctures. They might also squish and squirm, which won't fill you with confidence.
Worse though, get your tyres too hard and you will be both uncomfortable and slow.
We're working with Zipp again on this subject, who've been at the forefront of tyre pressure science for a few years now, and through their research have realised that a lot of what we held to be true was not. So since then, they've been trying to educate people on the importance of correct tyre pressure, which for a lot of us might mean running less than we had been used to. Not just pumping the tyre up to the maximum recommended pressure then. Yes, I'm talking to you at the back there.
Firstly, let's start with the basics. What is it that we mean by optimal tyre pressure? What is it that we actually want our tyres to do? Well, number one, we want them to be efficient. We want them to help us ride further and faster for less effort. Two, we want them to give us comfort, to insulate us from the bumps and vibrations from the road. Three, control. We want them to have as much grip as possible so that we can corner better, brake faster, and ride more safely. And then four, we want them to stay inflated, so not puncture, basically. Now, your order of priorities might be different to mine, but for me, on my cargo bike, I would go 4, 3, 2, and 1. On my gravel bike, I would go 3, 2, 4, 1. And then on my road bike, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. By explaining the basics, I'm going to show you how you can optimize them for those parameters, simply by making them harder or softer. But as we'll see, those parameters are all interlinked and actually don't require many or even any trade-offs to get the absolute best. I'm going to start with the simplest and the easiest one, keeping your tyres inflated. Now, tyre pressure cannot stop a nail or a piece of glass from giving you a flat, but it can stop the other common cause of punctures, which is pinch flats. And that is where you get the inner tube, or if you're running tubeless, the tyre sometimes, caught between the edge of a pothole or a rock and the wheel rim. And so, rule number one, important point, Klaxon, is to have enough pressure in your tyre so that you don't strike the rim when you're out riding. Next, control, comfort and efficiency come as a package, and there is a lot to unravel there. Traditionally, road cyclists have been conditioned to think that hard tyres are faster because squishy tyres suck your energy. And in lab tests, we can see that to be true. Because if we consult the Bible, also known as bicyclerollingresistance.com, which is an incredible resource for cycling nerds like myself, because they've tested hundreds of different tyres at different pressures and different widths for, you guessed it, rolling resistance. You can see that without fail, higher pressures yield lower rolling resistance. And that is because a harder tyre will deform less as it rolls. And that deforming absorbs energy in a process called hysteresis. Warning, if you spend too long thinking about this, you might find yourself going hysterical. Hysterical? Yeah. Probably looks a bit better written down, that one.
Essentially, your tyre absorbs energy as you roll, but then springs back again. The more energy you get back, or the less you lose, the lower the rolling resistance.
However, that rolling resistance is just one component, and those tests to calculate rolling resistance are done, remember, in a lab on a steel drum. And that's a fantastic way to measure the difference in performance between tyres, but, important point, Klaxon, it's not the real world. In the real world, the surfaces we ride on are far from perfectly smooth, and anything other than a perfectly smooth surface introduces a second energy loss, one that can be potentially far greater than rolling resistance: vibration. So in the real world, the key is to absorb vibration, absorb roughness to the road, and that unlocks then improved comfort, increased efficiency, and greater speed. And it's something that I'd always known about, I think, but it wasn't until I made a video in the old days of GCN with Matt Stevens on the cobbles of Paris-Roubaix that the penny really dropped. Hold on, can we lose the sepia? Wasn't that long ago.
What do you get if you ride a road bike, a cyclocross bike and a mountain bike down the most fearsome sector of pavé? Not a bad joke, but a light bulb moment. I'd guess that the fastest bike would be the cyclocross bike. Bigger, softer tyres than the road bike, but still narrow enough to be fast, plus drop handlebars and no suspension to bob around. But no, it was the mountain bike. It felt slow, but was significantly faster because it had almost completely isolated us from any vibration.
That is an extreme example, both in terms of the bikes and also the surface that we're riding on, but it does illustrate the point about just how important vibration absorption is, to the extent that a deeply unaero mountain bike with a deeply unaero rider on it was faster than a road bike or a cyclocross bike. More significantly though, perhaps, in Zipp's own research from back in 2018 that actually started them on their mission for total efficiency and not just aerodynamics, they found that even on a good quality road surface, lower pressures and wider tyres could be faster, even though in the wind tunnel they were not. So they tested a 28 up against a 23 and a 25 at different pressures, and they saw clearly that a 28mm tyre at lower pressures required significantly fewer watts for a rider to travel at 40k an hour.
So, important point, Klaxon. Real-world testing has shown that lower pressures reduce vibration. So if you want to go faster and you're not in a velodrome, lower pressures are quicker. So that is number one ticked off. Plus, lower pressures reduce vibration, which therefore makes you more comfortable. Number two ticked off. Furthermore, lower pressures put more tyre in contact with the road, which gives you more grip. More rubber means more traction. So that is number three ticked off as well. The only thing you want to be careful of is dropping the pressure so much that the tyre squirms as it begins to collapse under cornering forces and therefore gives you less control.
But by that point, you're well into pinch flat territory. And so as we heard a moment ago, you'll need to increase the pressure anyway. So those are the basics. What then is the optimal tyre pressure for you? Well, the best thing to find out is a tyre pressure calculator. That probably deserved a klaxon. Oh my God, that was uncalled for. I've not been wasting your time. I'm a firm believer in knowing why you should do something. But now you know why, it's time for one of the best shortcuts in all of cycling.
SRAM's tyre pressure calculator is actually my go-to. How does it find your optimal pressure? Well, you input your weight, your bike weight, what riding you're doing, and whether it's wet or dry. Then there is some more specific equipment related info needed. What are your tyres like? What's their width, the internal rim width, and are you running hookless? Because this data has a bearing on tyre volume, which also affects the pressure you need to run. Higher volume tyres need lower air pressures because the surface of the tyre is held under increased tension. The reason it's looking at tyre width and rim width is because that has a bearing on tyre volume, which then has a bearing on the pressure that you run. So a higher volume tyre needs a lower pressure, and that's because the surface of the tyre is held under increased tension.
Rim width and also whether the rim is hooked or hookless will change the cross-sectional profile of the tyre as well.
And by making the sidewall straighter, not only make it more aerodynamic, but also make the tyre better able to support lateral cornering forces.
But you will find that in order to get the same degree of vibration absorption, you'll need to drop the pressures even lower. So you might find if you've got a particularly new school setup of wider tyres, wide rims and hookless, that the tyre pressure calculator will be spitting out pressures that might seem on the face of it way too low, but that could be one of the reasons why. I mean, even just this example here, so on my bike I've got a 303 Firecrest which measure 25 millimeters internally, and here I've got a 404 Firecrest which is 23 millimeters wide internally, and on both wheels I've got 28mm tyres. The difference that 2 millimeters rim width makes is 2 psi per tyre, which might sound significant or not, depending on your particular perspective on this. I think it sounds like quite a lot. On the road, there is actually quite a large margin of error on pressures, or to put another way, quite a large range of what is considered optimal, maybe like 10 psi or something. And that's a really good thing, not only to take a little bit of pressure off you, pardon the pun, but also because a lot of track pumps might overread or underread. However, if you are concerned with fractions of a watt, then you can get super nerdy and refine it down a little bit. And that's where something like this comes in handy. This little gizmo is called a Tyre Whiz, and it can tell me to within 1/10 of a psi what pressure is in my tyres, and it does that via Bluetooth to my phone. Oh yes. It's actually also good for people that aren't nerdy. You can see there's a flashing LED there, so you can set that to your optimal tyre pressure range and it will change colour if you go out of that.
You can also see the data displayed on your head unit as well, which, while not need-to-know data, is cool to monitor, and it can definitely put your mind at ease during those have I got a flat moments that we all have from time to time.
The calculator takes into account the most important variables, and it does take so much guesswork and requires so much less experience to get your tyres right. But you can always refine it a little bit more depending on your own priorities. And it's actually very easy to do your own quite scientific testing, although you will need a power meter to get it accurate. Simply ride down a stretch of road and record the power and the speed, and then the only thing you change is the tyre pressure, and then you record the change in power. Now, as I said, I'm pretty relaxed on the road about tyre pressure, plus or minus 5 psi, and part of that is because I know that on any given ride the road surface will change quite significantly, and so there's always a compromise to be made. Off-road though, I'm a little bit more particular. Basically, I want to make sure I don't hit the rim more than a couple of times a ride, but otherwise, I want the lowest tyre pressure that I can get away with for increased comfort, increased vibration absorption, and also, therefore, increased traction. And I know what my preferred pressure is on my local rides, on my 40mm tyres, on my 303 Firecrest. And funnily enough, it actually tallies up almost perfectly with the calculator. I just run a couple of psi more because my gravel riding tends to be more gravel trails than gravel roads. So that is tyre pressure explained. You know now why you need to run a certain tyre pressure. You know what factors affect that optimal tyre pressure, and you also know the amazing shortcut that turns a dark art into an exact and very easily accessible science: tyre pressure calculators. We'll put the link in the description to the SRAM/Zipp calculator that I've been talking about in this video. So if you want to get through and have a play with it, just click on that link now. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a big thumbs up, and do make sure you subscribe to GCN as well. We have got loads of content on the channel already, and there's more coming up for you basically every day.